What is the latest on Project Marvel? Let's react to the mayor's memo with local San Antonio political consultant Andrew Solano. Happy Monday. Welcome back to Spurs in Focus right here on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, pick a platform. We are there. The Substack, completely free. Spurs in Focus Substack. Go sign up right now. Hit subscribe. Be a part of the crew. As always, I thank you for making Spurs in Focus your first and only spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. Come here every day, every minute, every second for your latest and greatest on the silver and black. My name is Jeff Garcia, longtime Spurs writer in San Antonio. What are we talking about today? Well, the city is abuzz. Well, y'all know by now, I know y'all have not been living under a rock. A few days ago, the mayor, Ortiz Jones, she put a letter out to the city attorney, city manager. Basically, in a nutshell, y'all know this, asking for kind of a revoke/redo on Project Marvel. And her aim is the financial contribution that the city and the county they're doing. As she said in her memo, you pay twice, you vote twice. Is that true? Well, we're going to be breaking all that down. And yes, y'all have a lot of Spurs fans, residents of Bexar County, San Antonio have been confused even more. And then the big question is, why is she doing this? What's the point of all this? I thought this was settled. That seems to be the biggest confusion point. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to get into just what is the latest and then react, as I mentioned, to the memo and why maybe she might be getting some things wrong. We're going to have a great guest right now. He is a local San Antonio political consultant. He is on X at Andrew_Solano. He is Mr. Andrew Solano. He worked with the Win Together campaign back in 2025. I was going to bring him on stage. Welcome back, Andrew. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Good to be back. I'm doing well. I appreciate the opportunity to come out here. And quite frankly, I just want to help answer questions and get the facts out there on this very important deal.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like I'm telling you, Andrew, like this. Here we go again. Why does it feel like, oh my God, I thought
deja vu, right?
Yeah, I thought this was settled, but apparently not. Again, y'all heard the intro. The mayor of San Antonio, she put out a memo, again, directed to the city attorney, city manager, et cetera. We'll put it in the screen in a little bit so y'all can see it for full disclosure. In a nutshell, Andrew, she's asking for a revote. She's saying, wait a minute. We have this city deficit. It's pay twice. We're paying twice. Shouldn't we get a double vote now, et cetera, et cetera? Let's go to put it on the screen here. So again, y'all can see for yourself exactly what she is talking about. And of course, myself and Andrew will be off to the side. Andrew, there is the memo, as you can see.
In all our words.
This memo kind of sparked a lot of controversy. I guess a little controversy / confusion. We're going to get to that in a bit. Regarding Project Marvel. And by now, y'all know what Project Marvel is. It's we're bringing back the Spurs to a new arena in downtown San Antonio. And of course, the entertainment district, the development in that area. It's not just the arena. So there's a lot more going on there. But Andrew, you've been with this Win Together campaign, back in 2025. You've been all about that. When you first saw this letter, this /memo from the mayor, we'll have it on the screen right now for y'all. What was your reaction? Why this memo to even begin with?
Yeah, no. Well, listen, probably even more important than my time on the Win Together campaign as political director is the nearly 20 years that I've spent working at City Hall. I've been, every position on for elected officials down from constituents, policy director, and then chief of staff most recently for Councilwoman Sapor, which is District 1, and full disclosure, I mean, that's where this development is going to take place, right? So, right. I mean, look, people are going to call me biased, and I welcome it, but it doesn't mean that my analysis or opinions are flawed, right? I mean, I'm clear-eyed when it comes to my experience and what that tells me and my unique perspective on these type of deals. And so saying that, I mean, listen, the pay twice, vote twice is a catchy slogan. Look, I'm a political consultant. I don't hide from that. That is what I do. I would advise clients, everybody right now, their ability to retain information and their attentiveness. I mean, you're talking about 15 to 30 seconds, right? Whatever fits on a TikTok, post or Twitter. And so like, it's good in that sense, it's a catchy slogan, but that's not good governance, right? Seeing this memo was frustrating, I think, because again, it perpetuates this notion that again that the citizens of San Antonio, the residents, um, are going to have to pay for this twice. And I would argue, and look, I welcome the argument. I think that's good for democracy. We should be having conversations, but they have to be in good faith. And in a time right now, nationally and worldwide, like to not be able to know the facts is problematic, right? And so I don't think we need to bring that down to the local level in San Antonio. And I think this, unfortunately, is what happens when that is the case. And so, I will just kind of get into the Twitter post that you mentioned. Again, I want to be clear. I do not work for the Spurs. I'm doing this on behalf of anyone but myself as an informed citizen, again, with a unique perspective and experience. And so I posted that because I just wanted to really like answer questions that I kept seeing get popped up. Friends of mine are asking me about this, and it's understandable why there's a lot of this confusion. But let me just be very, very clear. The pay twice, vote twice is a slogan. It's catchy. It gets attention. The mayor has succeeded on that, but it's just not how the financing works. And let me break down why very clearly. If you are a Bexar County, if you are a city of San Antonio resident, you by extension a Bexar County resident, because the totality of the city of San Antonio limits are within Bexar County. And so again, it's a misnomer to say, that only the county voted. Well, who makes up the county? If you are a city of San Antonio resident, you are a Bexar County resident. It's not always the other way around, right? Because you can live in the county and live in any number of the smaller suburban cities. You can live in the ETJ in the county. But if you are a city of San Antonio resident, you live in the county. Let's just be clear about that. And so, yes, if you voted and you happen to be a San Antonio resident, yeah, you did vote on this already. In fact, this was more encompassing because, again, it was countywide. But again, back to the paying twice argument, why I think that's just so disingenuous is, again, and I was, while on the campaign, almost every single evening, every single day, multiple times a day, I was out there trying to inform voters who had these very same questions. So like you said earlier, it does feel like a deja vu. The amount of money in the county's contribution, the $311 million, was from visitor tax, right? That is not money that a San Antonio resident will be paying unless you decide you want to rent a hotel room, which is fine. You're going to pay the increase of the 2% that was passed, right? Be clear there. If you go rent a hotel room before this vote in November, you are already paying part of that tax, right? No one necessarily complained then. It was increased. What voters did in November for Prop A and B was they increased the amount of that tax for visitors if you went to go rent a car or a hotel room. So let's just be clear about that. And I know people were going to yell at me in the comments and say, well, that's not being honest because you do pay it. Again, I'm just saying, if you are a property owner in the city of San Antonio or county, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily paying for this. The other would be if you are an investor in the Spurs, yeah, you are going to pay for this, right? If you are a developer who plans on opening up a place of business or developing in the boundary of that zone in within hemisphere, you will be paying for this. Outside of that, you are not paying. So again, you're not paying once there unless you meet one of those requirements I just stated. Number two, the mayor saying that you're voting to twice because you're paying twice as a city of San Antonio resident is also misleading at best, if not just an outright lie, because the money that is going to be coming out of the city's contribution, which again was not voted on, and let's just explain really quick to your listeners why. The county had to have a vote because the visitor tax is a financial instrument, economic development tool by the state. The state by law requires that if you raise that visitor tax, that you have to take that to a vote. Separate from that, what the city's going to do in its 489 million max contribution part is that they're using financial mechanisms that allow them to do so without having to go to a vote, right? So that's the key difference. Number two, that 489 million is going to be paid back. First of all, it's the bonds that the city will take out, right? They're going to go borrow that money at relatively low interest rates, which is what every city in this country does. And again, you can have an argument, a good-natured, honest argument about whether or not you believe that the city should be taking out bonds. But again, the facts are the city will take out upwards of no more than 489 million over the lifetime of this deal. How they will pay that back is what's in question, right?
Right.
You and I are not paying that money back out of our property taxes. You again would pay that back. The PFZ was a state instrument that was created for larger cities like Dallas and Houston, take advantage, and now San Antonio, to put a boundary around their downtowns, and to have that money, the increased value of development, to go into a fund that pays for that exact development, right? So this is not money that exists now, and it's not money that would otherwise go into the general fund. Again, I want to be very clear. The TIRZ, tax increment reinvestment zone, is similar. That is a city tool that they use that exists now. The Hemisphere TIRZ, if you just Google, you can go and see it's one of a number of TIRZ that exists in the city as economic development tools, where the city, prior to a TIRZ going into place, and I know we're nerding out, but this is important because this is where the confusion is. The TIRZ takes the incremental value that increases over time above the base of a property tax. So if your home is being taxed at the amount now today, and you were to have a TIRZ on that's not how it works. But if you were to have a TIRZ on your property, the amount that you're paying now, let's say it's $7,000 a year, whatever. If it now was increased and it's $10,000, that $3,000 now that it's increased, instead of going to the general fund like your $7,000 does, taxing entities, it now goes into a pot to fix your house. Okay, right? That's how a TIRZ works. That's how the Hemisphere TIRZ works right now. Honestly, it's one of the worst performing TIRZ in terms of revenue generated, but it will be one of the best, if not the best, because the Spurs are guaranteeing in writing, we have that in the term sheet, $2 billion worth of development. So like, it's almost guaranteed. They're going to invest money on their own with their partners. Therefore, the property rates will increase. The city and the other taxing entities are still going to get the money that they were getting prior to this TIRZ in place. They're just now going to capture the increase, which is going to go up hopefully quite a bit. But again, you're not paying that if you don't own property in Hemisphere. This city's going to own the arena. That's another thing that gets kind of lost in all of this, right? This is not the Spurs arena. The Spurs will be leasing. That's another component of how that 489 million is going to be paid back. So we have a PFZ tool by the state. We have a TIRZ economic development tool by the city. And then we have the lease from the Spurs paying the city to use the arena, which is revenue. And then also the leasing from anybody else who's going to develop. That is the 409. That is the crux of what we're talking about here. I said a lot. What you didn't hear me say, though, is that you or I or any other San Antonio resident will be paying those bonds back with our property tax money, right? So that's why I made clear in my post that paying twice is not accurate, right? That is not how that works. To say otherwise is a mixed characterization at best, and misleading at worst.
Andrew, again, I'm reading the letter so fans can kind of follow with you and then read what she's saying in her letter here. But one thing that I want to highlight in her memos, y'all seeing on your screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, she keeps on harping on the city deficit, deficit, this and that, and this and that. And then you hear her doing the local media routes right now, and saying, "Well, the deficit is this," and shouldn't residents get a chance to see or hear, let them vote on, do they really want this money to go to an arena? When she's talking about the poverty, as you see on her memo, affordability crisis in San Antonio. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, this is another really important piece that I think gets buried. And again, it's confusing, right? Like, I've done this for nearly 2 decades, and it can still be confusing to me. And so I just want to be very clear here. The budget deficit that the mayor is insinuating, right? I don't know if she specifically, and I've read that letter already. She does a good job of like just enough, but if you were to read it, you would understand what her point is that we have a large deficit. Deals like this deserve to get scrutinized. Why are we giving $489 million to this development when we're in a deficit? Well, she can say that that's not the case, that that's not what she meant, but clearly that's the takeaway here. I will point out to your listeners and viewers that after my post, the mayor did go on WAI, I believe, or Fox 29, and Jordan Elder, the reporter, did a great job of asking the mayor, pushing back on this. I think Councilman Mark White had also done so, and she asked, so Jordan asked the mayor on camera, will, like what you just said, as your memo insinuates, does this deficit, will it be impacted by the 49? And the mayor said no. She clarified what we all have been saying, that that money is not the same. So why is she bringing it up? She articulates an argument that in the long term it matters. But let me just tell you my perspective on this. The budget deficit that we have is not a surprise. As you know, and your listeners probably know, I was the campaign manager for one of the other mayoral candidates, Beto Altamirano. We came in third place and ran a really great campaign. And this was for the top candidates, I mean, for across the board, but in the debates, the budget deficit was already known. This is not a surprise. This was a talking point that we were working on back in 24, 25 during the campaign. The city works in 2-year cycles. So like when they say there's a budget deficit, it's really, it's forecasted for the next year as well. So this is really for 2 years out. And so I say that because, the mayor and this council, one of their priorities when you get elected in office is public safety, obviously, but also economic development. How do we as a city continue to grow? We're one of the fastest cities that are experiencing growth in the nation, along with our area between here and Austin. These are things that we knew were coming. I think it's an opportunity here for the mayor to, again, drag down the narrative that we see across the country, which is, people over billionaires, and you've seen a lot of her tactics on that and the talking points. But when it comes down to it, the mayor has already mentioned or admitted that this will not impact that deficit because, and here's the point I want to make on this specific issue. That 49, again, as I said, does not come from property taxes. Those property taxes either don't exist now or were already being dedicated to other pots, to other funding sources. Now, here's the wrinkle. Just a few weeks ago, and I mentioned this in my post, because this is a tool I have specifically been using. I hope your listeners have picked up on this. These are economic development tools. We all have a toolkit. This is what you're elected to go do. Figure out the best deal to bring, whether it's companies like Toyota in this case, and that's the one I use in my example. The city and county both, and there was also state money, but the city in particular, just approved not even 4 weeks ago, a rather large, worth hundreds of millions of dollars worth of incentives for Toyota to expand their plant here, their presence. It's going to create a lot of good jobs, high-paying jobs. That's great. I'm not arguing that. I think we should have. That's a deal that you take in this environment. The problem that I see is that it's hypocritical to say that for that deal, which gave Toyota tax abatement. So let's just be clear on that. What a tax abatement is it says as an incentive to get you here, right, to expand your plant, because there's other places you could go around the nation. San Antonio went together and said as a community, we want you to be here. You have a long-standing presence, and to sweeten the deal, right, to make it so that you come here, we're going to offer you a tax abatement. This happens all the time, right? If you just go and Google and look to see how much money the city and the county have foregone over the last few decades, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars because it's a return on your investment. In this case, the city and the county, but I'm focused on the city here, said to Toyota, over 10 years, we're not going to collect any of the property tax that would otherwise be coming into the city of San Antonio general fund. That's important. In that case, the mayor would be correct if she was saying that impacts the budget deficit, because that's money that will not be coming starting day one when they expand the plant and that tax payment goes into service for 10 years. After 10 years, that money will start coming back into the general fund. But that money right now, but I would also argue, like the Spurs deal, it doesn't exist now. So like I get that. But to be clear, the biggest difference is what the mayor is saying about the Spurs arena is actually applicable to the Toyota deal, which she has seemed to have no problem with, right? Those were monies that were actually going into the general fund that are now no longer will not go there. And in the case of the Spurs deal, which is what I said in my post, is you could argue a better deal for taxpayers because it doesn't actually come out of our property taxes. That's not money that was going to the general fund anyway. So I just think the distinction that's worth noting.
Andrew, in your opinion, why do you think she's not attacking the Toyota deal, but she's attacking the Spurs deal?
I don't know. I mean, I hate to speculate on this. I mean, all I can say is that it wasn't the Toyota deal. Hasn't been as controversial. There has been support. And so I think it's politically, expedient here to get that deal done. And again, I want to be clear. I am a supporter. I think these are the type of deals that happen. And this is why I started by saying any city in this country would kill for these type of deals, right? We are lucky to build a community. Because listen, when I was on the campaign trail for the Win Together campaign for the arena back in November for Prop B and Prop A, I would always hear from everybody about why isn't this money going to pay for the streets and sidewalks and drainage we need, and to pay our teachers more and to have better schools? And I would always tell them, I agree with you 1,000%. Unfortunately, this money cannot legally be used for that, right? Because these are state tools that they have laws that say this money can't be used for that. But more importantly, these are the type of deals in the Spurs arena and the Project Marvel general development, just like the Toyota deal, just like other countless deals over the decades here, that the city decides we want to put in something, whatever that looks like, and as a return on our investment, we are going to get something else back. In this case, we're going to get, whether it's property taxes, it's good paying jobs. The San Antonio Spurs in the finals run alone, generated millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? And so that, even if that weren't the case, that's the return on your investment. And I know you can argue back and forth. There's a lot of academic arguments around there's never been a deal that really benefits. I think it's how you look. I'm not an economist. I'm a political scientist and a consultant here. But what I can tell you is, though, that is what elected officials are looking for. That is their job, is to make sure that we continue to be one of the most successful cities, if not the most successful in this country, at a time when the economy is taking a downturn. These are the type of deals, again, that we should be lucky to have. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that if you want San Antonio to increase and its economic development toolkit, this is not something that you take off the table for one deal just because you think it's one that's not politically convenient for you.
Right. No, Andrew, I have on the screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, a kind of an artist's conception of what the final product of Project Marvel will look like. As y'all can see, if you're watching on the YouTube, there you see a mock rendering of the downtown arena, of course, the development all around it. But I bring this on the screen right now, and I think you know where I'm going with this, because she keeps on saying, the mayor, that the deal has changed. We're hearing that from her, and whenever she is doing her media circuit, she talks about the land bridge. You can see it on your screen right now if you're watching. Again, this is just a concept art, but she's saying, well, that's no longer on there. And what about the SAWS plan and X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C? What is your reaction to her saying that the deal has changed, thus we need another vote?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is deals change. I mean, there are parts of this that will, it just doesn't work to where, you start a deal and every single thing is planned out and it goes that way. You build in protection for each other. Again, like you alluded to, this is just a rendering. I mean, no one ever said
a rendering,
and I don't think it was the intention, certainly, that this was going to be the final. I think even I can share with you my experience when I was on the campaign trail. I would always tell people, even at that point, early before the November vote, like, it was already being talked about. You can't control the administration. You don't know who's going to be there for 8 years. And the fact that when there was one administration, when this conversation started, that was more likely to have funding for the Department of Transportation at the time with Secretary Pete Buttigieg. And those are the type of deals that they were looking for, connecting communities and getting cars off the road and that. So now we have a different administration, has different priorities. So like, it's not something that the Spurs or any one of the partners went in thinking. But I mean, look, I tend to trust. I've worked with a lot of these folks. They're the experts that I would say in the budget office, and they crunch the numbers, and they're going to go figure out how to make this deal work. I will tell you, I am not aware of another deal, certainly in San Antonio history, but also elsewhere, where the person, in this case, the Spurs, is coming to you and saying, we are going to invest $2+ billion, right? Upwards in three if you put everything into it. And I know the mayor likes to downplay the 75 million that goes into this. It's 2.5 million. And any chance she gets, she likes to say that how that's only 150 potholes or speed humps or whatever. But I'll tell you what, she's very quick to talk about how, you know, the at the time of this recording, that the governor just came out and said that they're talking about possibly taking away CPS's ability to give 14% of their revenue that they create to the city, which would be horrible. Let me just be clear. That is an existential threat. We get 14% of every, so 14 cents of every dollar CPS makes come back into our community. It is not made up of investors. It's made up of us as customers, and the city of San Antonio owns that. If that goes away, 158 million is going to be pocket change when we're talking about a deficit, right? But the mayor has made a point, rightfully so, that that money funds our general fund, and it costs $4 million a year to feed our seniors. That 2.5 million, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? It can't be, oh, it's not a lot of money when it comes to the Spurs and what they're going to do per year for their $75 million contribution, but it's a lot of money when it comes to what the city is going to lose from CPS should the government get its way. And so I just want to point that out. There is a lot of good in this, very little downside for the taxpayer. There are protections built into this. Again, you can disagree whether or not you think it's enough, but you cannot disagree with the protections being there for the taxpayer.
Yeah. Andrew, you know, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but I have a few more questions. Just kind of start putting a bow on this chat with you here. Look, she's obviously an intelligent woman. You know, she's highly educated and whatnot. And you discussed a lot of numbers here and where money comes from. You even mentioned about that the money that the state sets aside for, you know, development of sports arenas and big large cities. That, and it doesn't take a scientist or, you know, or engineer or whatever to understand that. Well, if you don't want that money, it just goes back to the state, but you're still left with the deficit, aren't you?
Yeah,
it's still a big.
That's the kind of cognitive dissonance I think that I see here that's frustrating, because again, these are not easy concepts to grasp, and it just doesn't make it. It makes it exponentially more difficult, I think, for the everyday person to understand when there's misinformation like this. You're absolutely right. That money just doesn't come here, and it'll go to someone else who's waiting for it, right? And
our deficit still remains, though, no matter what.
Yeah, and that's my point. If anything, the irony in all of this to me is that these are the type of deals that help you get out of a deficit. Yes, it's going to be long-term, but like, I mean, you can argue that the Toyota deal has jobs and they're more high paying maybe than what jobs that you're going to get from the arena being downtown. But let me tell you, $2 billion or $3 billion worth of development is life-changing for business owners downtown, the hotels, the people who work in those, you know, the workers who are making a living doing that. You know, obviously, like, we need to do everything that we can to raise those wages. But I will tell you, the labor community, you know, the folks that work over at AT&T who will be laying the optics for this arena to make sure it's the best in the world. The IBEW, the CWA, the pipe fitters, plumbers, the steel and electrical workers, those are all family members, friends, our neighbors who make a great wage here in our blue collar city, who would not be able to benefit. And you can say, well, those are temporary. Well, yeah, all construction jobs are temporary, and you move on to the next one. But I mean, to sit there and argue and say that this is not going to bring that development, I think is performative, and I just think it's a disservice, because in the end, whether you can agree or not on what the total amount of investment will be, but you cannot sit there and claim that this will not have an overall benefit for our city, and that in the long run, again, it's the same reason why they passed the Toyota deal, because ultimately that will help, you know, our budget deficit by bringing in more of a tax base, bringing in people who are going to be making wages that purchase stuff that then go back into our property. It is the same thing here. In fact, again, this is a better deal in my view for the taxpayer, because again, there's more protections, there's more of an upside. And again, take the Spurs out of this. As if this were Amazon that says we're going to build our headquarters here downtown in Hemisphere. You would still need to do infrastructure improvements in a bond. You would still need to improve the access road. We've all been there. I always tell this story that coming off the access road on 37 into the Alamo Dome, when I got my master's degree at UTSA, I missed it because I was stuck in traffic. Right? Like, we've all been there. We've all been there and missed half the Elton John concert of Bad Bunny. Because you were stuck in. It has to get fixed regardless if the Spurs arena is there or if it's a hotel or another part of the convention center. But to have someone, if Amazon had come in and said, we want to do this, we're going to put in $2 billion. By the way, we're going to build you a facility that you will own. We're going to lease it back from you. I could go on and on. I think your listeners are smart enough to know that this doesn't pass the sniff test. And for them, whatever, I'm not going to ascribe or speculate on the mayor's motives here. Obviously, she thinks it's in the best interest. But I will end with this. I know that the mayor is putting on these community conversations that I would quite frankly urge your listeners and viewers to go to. If the mayor wants to have her supporters go and talk about how they want a new vote, great. That's democracy. That's what I do. That's my bread and butter. I will never turn away from a good old town hall. But at the same time, for those of us who support the arena and think it's the right deal and that we don't need to revote on this, spend that time and energy. I wish the mayor had been these community conversations about supporting CPS Energy, pushing back on the governor. I think that would be a great use of time and energy. But this is what she's chosen. Great, fine. So what? Let's meet the mayor where she's at. Let's do it respectfully. Let's stick to the ideas here. And if you disagree, go show up, right? Just like you do at the ballot box, like you did in November, that you got this approved. And if you think that was enough, as R.C. Buford just penned in a great letter that he released that talked about the Spurs' commitment to San Antonio, if you support that idea, go and support your council members who live in these areas who are saying to the mayor, enough, the vote has already happened. We want to move forward and get this deal done as soon as possible. And I will end with one last note, because this thing you talked about enough. You talk about a delay here. These delays, let's just say if you're building a house, you know what a delay costs when materials. If you're talking about delay for deals like this, you're talking about unfathomable amounts to you and I. We're talking $80+ million per year, every year that this doesn't get built, right? That is all money that's just being wasted, set aside. People are ready to go. The Spurs are well within, on their timeline of getting people. The city hired their project manager. Like, these things are going to be happening fast. We just are coming off of a great finals appearance. And I'll just say this: the only thing that we should be running back right now, Jeff, is the NBA Finals appearance against the Knicks. Man.
Absolutely, I'm with you, man. Yeah, let's get the rubber match going. 99, we beat the Knicks. In 2026 they beat us. So we'll get the right back. Hey, real quick though, again, we have District 10 Councilman Mark White. He was a guest on San Antonio Sports Stars The Blitz, and he kind of lines up his words about what the mayor and what she's aiming for in the memo. Kind of lines up with what you're saying to us here. He said, quote, "We cannot sit back and allow the mayor to say things that frankly are not true. And what she's doing here is misleading the public with respect to these $489 million, and what it can and can't be used is simply wrong." So, you have, Mark White, District 10's pushing back on her. By the way, at least according to Mark White, again, of District 10, he indicates that City Council will likely not vote in favor of a revote. But he just kept on hammering that she cannot be spreading misinformation to Bexar County residents. His words, again, if you want to go to San Antonio Sports Stars website, they have an archive. You can listen to it in full. And you mentioned R.C. Buford. He puts out the letter kind of reaffirming the commitment to the city, Project Marvel, whatnot. Man, it's so wild, Andrew, how one memo stirred all this hornet's nest up again.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And look, I think for the councilmen, this can't just be on them, right? And I want to be very clear on what I'm about to say, because it's not a controversial take. We live in a representative democracy, right? And I told you I'm a political scientist, got my master's. I work on campaigns and public service. If we wanted to have a direct democracy like they did in ancient Greece, we'd get together every 6 months and go fight it out in an arena, right? Some people may want to do that again, but we live in a representative democracy. That's the beauty of the U.S. We just celebrated our 250th, celebration. And for me, it's frustrating because we vote for people to go represent us, That's the part of the representative piece of democracy, right? They don't get to have that in other countries around the world. And so for us, like, we need to embrace that. It's okay, obviously, when we need to get the public's input, but to just say on every large issue, we're going to take it to the voters, that's not how this necessarily works, right? Like, why did we vote you in? If not, then we would just, again, we would have referendums all the time. Again, why didn't you take the Toyota deal to the ballot box? Because she knows, and this council knows that you were there to make the hard decisions. Just like the property tax, they're entertaining a property tax increase for the city, right? For the first time in over 30 years. That is a very difficult position to take. You never want the elected official who votes to increase someone's property taxes, but we voted you in. You wrote it. You decided to run for office for those tough decisions. This is one of those, right? The state doesn't require that you go to a vote for this. This is what they give you, city council, the authority. That council voted to support it against the mayor. She lost then. She'd lose again if this goes back to the polls, just like she did in November.
Yeah.
That's democracy. We can't, it's not just democracy when it's convenient for you, right? And so in this case, let's put that energy. You know how much time and energy it's going to take away from city staff who right now are up to their eyeballs in budget deficit conversations and cutting. And then you add the Governor Abbott piece about CPS energy. We've got blackouts, and there's so much that's happening right now. We've got missions, San Antonio military installation missions that are leaving to go to other places. The bottom just closed, because of something else that the mayor has decided to focus on. That is all brain power, time and energy, which is money, from her staff, from city staff, and the council members that are taking away, from my opinion, the more important issues right now. And if they're not focused on those things to be focused on this, that is a disservice to our community.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, the city does have until August 17th to place this proposed measure, from the mayor on the November ballot. But as I mentioned, District 10's Mark White on San Antonio Spurs The Blitz did indicate that chances are unlikely that would happen again, according to him. But again, you can listen to that interview over at San Antonio Sports Stars website. Oh man, this feels like deja vu all over again. It really does. But you know what, Andrew? Everybody was confused back in November 25-ish, around that time period there. You fast forward to just the last few days. It felt like people were like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? I think it just threw everything, like it was like the record, the needle skipping on the record.
And I think, I'll be honest.
Like, what happened? Yeah.
I'll be honest. A lot of the time that I spent on that campaign through November of last year on Prop A and B was correcting a lot of the misinformation that was out there. And a lot of that was being put out by the mayor, unfortunately. And it doesn't bring me any pleasure. Like, I don't want to be in the position where I have to say those things. And again, you can disagree with me. That's fine. But it's true that the mayor has said things that are not technically accurate, or however you want to describe them. And it's not helpful, because then it leads to these questions where people are out there arguing back and forth, and my comments and others. I would say, I think that I feel a difference this time. I think there's enough people out there who have now, it's been a year since this council was elected. We just crossed over a year. We do have 3 years to go. And so get used to it, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My guy didn't win. And so we're here, right? And I'm no sour grapes. I want the mayor to succeed, just like anyone else, because that means if she's succeeding, we as a community are succeeding. And so, it doesn't bring me any joy. I would be saying this regardless. But I do feel like I've earned the right, given my experience on this particular deal, working at city council, to help navigate through some of this for people who just have genuine questions. I've seen a lot of people in my comments who are like, thanks for breaking it down. And I'm happy. I'm going to do more. And I'm looking to put together, I've been tossing this idea back around with friends and supporters. I want to do what I can, my part, to get out there and bring the supporters of the arena and the Spurs together. And that we get to go out there and do like we're going to do with these community conversations to make our voices heard. The other side can make theirs heard as well. And should this go to a vote, then we'll make our voices heard again at the ballot box.
Absolutely. For also, to be fair, as Andrew mentioned, the mayor is hosting listening sessions. You do want to attend those. As Andrew said, I encourage you to go do it. There's actually one today, Monday evening. So if you want more information, just go to the mayor's.
Yeah, tonight's is at the Hardburger Ecology Center. which is splits District 8 and 9. So Councilwoman Luis Gonzalez Mesa Gonzalez and Misty Spears. I'll be there. I urge you to go. I'm sure there will be other ones up to
for sure.
on the 17th. So
yeah. And also, too, the Spurs are also hosting their own community talks as well. So
yeah, work is continuing on the arena property. Get that thing opened so that we can hoist our, at that time, hopefully 6th, 7th, 8th banner after we ran it back. And so I couldn't be more excited. And you've seen what the Spurs mean to this community. I think more than anything else, if there was any doubts of what the Spurs meant to our community, it's not just a basketball. I'm sure you saw, I took my nephew for the first time honking down Commerce, and it was amazing.
He's in downtown, and I can hear it. I would hear hearing it.
Yeah, I know. I love it. And I mean, look, I used to go to the meetings I would host and say, like, look, turn to your neighbor here that you may not know and talk about real quick before we get started to kind of level set. What's your favorite Spurs moment, right, in your history? I remember going as a kid when they first won the championship with my parents at 2 a.m. to the airport, right? Like, those are things that you can't put a price on. And bringing our community together, again, it's what other cities would kill for, to have something like that. It's our one major sports in this town. And for me, I think they've been the perfect steward of not just our community and our culture. And we should take advantage of that as long as we can.
Absolutely. Again, for those Spurs community sessions, just go to the website, spurs.com. All the information should be there too. And again, the mayor hosting her own as well. Go to her Instagram, Twitter, social media. You'll see all the dates there as well. By the way, speaking of the Spurs going back to the finals, I heard one thing they want to correct this year, well, the new year coming up into hopefully a long playoff run, is bringing in a guard out of San Antonio named Andrew Solano. They think Andrew Solano could be the key to getting over that little.
Man, I played in high school. I could set those screens for the wins, those back screens, lobs. But no, I'm excited, man. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope to be back on in whatever it takes, right?
Let me know if you need help. Whatever I have to do on my end, we'll do to get the word out. And once again, everybody, he is Mr. Andrew Solano, a local San Antonio political consultant. He worked with the Win Together campaign in 2025. You want to follow him on X. He has a phenomenal thread. Go check out @Andrew_Solano. Go follow right now. He's getting a lot of. There's even an article about it on Spurs in Focus Substack. I mean,
thank you.
It's that good.
You're the reason it went viral.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that nerdy guy's talking about it. Yeah, well, that's us. But again, Andrew, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We appreciate it here at Spurs in Focus, and everybody else. We thank you all for making Spurs in Focus your first and only spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. Come here every day, every week, every second to catch up on the latest and greatest on the silver and black. We are on Instagram. No, I'm sorry. No, we're not on Instagram. Not yet. But we are on YouTube Music. What else you got? Amazon Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify. The list goes on and on. Substack is completely free. Go sign up right now. Spurs in Focus, Substack. Google that. Hit subscribe. You're in for free. Yeah, I don't charge a penny. Go subscribe ASAP. We'll be back on Wednesday as the Spurs offseason continues. We're going to be close to the training camp, but little by little, we'll get you through the doldrums of the NBA offseason. So for Mr. Andrew Solano, I am Jeff Garcia. Well, now you are in focus with Spurs in Focus.